So I am Juliana Prosepio. As she said, I am one of the co-founders of Echos, this innovation lab driven by design that is started in Brazil and now is expanding its branches to Australia, Portugal, and different places. We're working a lot with Asia as well. So I am a designer, a chief design officer, and to increase accessibility, I'm going to talk a little bit about myself and how I look. So I'm wearing glasses. I have brown hair. I'm wearing a white t-shirt and some colorful earrings. And in the settings, I'm here sitting, also working from home. And you can see some stairs behind me and a bit of plants. So it's a pleasure to be here today with all these ladies worldwide and to talk about desirable futures. I'm very happy because desirable futures is a very important topic nowadays. We are in a time that is described by anthropologists as a liminal time. That is a time between times where a lot of our preconceptions and there is an expansion of thought and there is everything that was created before us kind of enters a suspension, and it's time for us, and there is this opportunity for us to redesign everything that is not working in our world, in our context. So I'm very, very, very happy to be here with you because I really do believe that there is this power with community of ladies like ladies at UX that can help to design a better world for the future. So I'll start sharing my screen and we'll jump right into the presentation now. So today I'm going to be talking about designing desirable futures. And as I said, this is a very important topic nowadays. And I'm going to be talking about the power of design, about an ever-changing world, and if you would prefer to predict the future or create it. So about the power of design, I think it's important for us to understand that human evolution is facilitated by our ability to invent and reinvent tools. And by creating tools, we're not only constantly evolving our skills, but we're also developing new skills that generate intentional or non-intentional results. And this ability to change is what makes us designers. So the reason why I'm saying that is that if we think that human evolution was facilitated by our ability to invent and reinvent tools, and this intentional change and creating different results is what makes us designers, it means that we as human beings, we are these Homo habilis who have the power to intentionally create change. We are the only kind of species that can do that. And these give us a great power to intentionally and deliberately choose whether we want to interfere in our ecosystem and change it or not. And because we're now living these liminal times, it's really the opportunity that we have nowadays to design and redesign how the future is going to be shaped. So maybe we thought before the effects of coronavirus that the world was going in one way, but we have a window now of opportunity to redesign it. And it's up to us, designers, women, and any kind of, let's say, human beings, what is going to be defined for the next years. So design evolved in the past years, and you were probably all UX designers and you know about that. But at the beginning, design was perceived as something related only to aesthetics and only to symbols. So we were designing graphic design, visual design, information design, and communication. Then with the Industrial Revolution, design evolved into product design, industrial design, and spatial design. And then design gained another relevance with the digitalization of the world, and it started to enter the spheres of interaction design. and also about service design, behavioral design, and digital design. And finally, design entered the strategic world and started to infer systems such as cultures, organizations, business, and learning. The reason why and this is a reference from Richard Buchanan, and the reason why I'm saying that is because us as designers, we need to understand where we are interfering and what kind of future we're designing in these spheres and in these orders of design. Are we thinking more precisely on the design of symbols? How is the symbols going to interfere the way how we feel, the way how we behave, and the interaction and the systems per se as well? We are also, the second part of this talk is to chat about this moment that we're living now. And we are living in an ever-changing world, like we're seeing now so many times with the effects of everything that has been happening in 2020. We know that there are things emerging, such as the social currency in China. And I'm showing here an image of people walking the streets of China, and you can see their ratings. So basically, this design of the social currency in China rates their citizens to understand if they are paying their taxes accordingly, if they are following the rules. But at the same time, this is something that we design that is going to control our society. Is this something that we want, or is this something that we don't want? Now, because of coronavirus as well, this perception that technology can tell us and rate our, let's say, and rate and track our behaviors is becoming more accepted by society. So here in Australia, where I'm talking from, Sydney, they launched an app that track everywhere that you go, so that it can, of course, tells if you are in contact with someone who has the virus. But at the same time, it can also control everything that you do as a citizen here. So what is the downside, and what are the things that we are designing? Are we designing things that are ethical, that are diverse, that are going to create a future that we want? Or are we just using tools because we think it's important and because we think it's interesting? So the social currency in China is a social credit, like a personal scorecard for each of China's 1 billion citizens. And this is something that is already happening now. It's not the future, right? And in this other image, we are discussing the emergence of techno empires versus governments. As designers, how much do we interfere in this change of power that before governments usually regulate citizens and how they behave, and now techno empires are doing this more and more so. The other image here, I'm also talking about Elon Musk and SpaceX. So Elon Musk is someone who started to explore more and more the moon. And he created SpaceX as this experiment to go to the moon and experience how it is to live in the moon through artists, understanding how they feel, how they see, and things like that. So as a space exploration company, they announced their first moon travel dedicated to explore the moon, of course. And the question that lies behind that is, are we talking about building these enormous rotating habitats in space? Or is that something that we want as a society? So all of these examples that I'm giving here are things that are already happening. And they are the design of the future that are happening, and the decisions that are making the future happen are being taken now. So is this something that we want as human beings, as citizens, or is something that we don't want? And the critique is that actually these decisions about the future are being made in places that are not diverse. They are usually being taken by people who are working in technology or in governments that are usually white and male. And again, we know that if we don't include all the people and we don't bring diversity and ethics, these systems that are being created now for our future are not going to be interesting, healthy, or even going to provide well-being for society. So this is the big question. Are we going to continue to unravel the rules-based systems of the modern world of the future, or are we going to change that? Penny Wong is a senator here in Australia, and she has been asking this a lot. And because we're living in a liminal time now, a time between times that we can redesign everything, everything is putting at stake, even the good things. So there is a pushback of the future of ending up in a dystopia, something similar to Black Mirrors, for example. But it's up to us to take control, let's say, and to try to put ourselves in the positions of helping and influencing the future. So Monica Buskit is a futurist, and she has this quote that I love that says, "Those who control the fantasy control the future." And she says that because we keep watching many of these Hollywood movies and reading stories that are dystopias. And these dystopias that we keep seeing, for example, in Handmaid's Tale or in Black Mirror or in the other show called Years and Years, they become our imagination. And because they become our imagination, they become product roadmaps. And she says, I don't even have words to express just how dangerous all this has become. So what I am here to talk about is that it's up to us if we are going to let the future unfold, and the decision being made in rooms where there is only probably white male people that are taking decisions for the rest of the citizens and the community and society, or are we going to take our responsibility and try to design and influence the futures? And there are three ways of looking into the futures, right? There is a way of looking into the future that is about looking at predictions of how the future might unfold. So understanding economical trends or technological trends. And this is the prediction. So we're going to see something that is happening now. We're going to expand that to the future. There's another way of looking to the future that is about speculate different alternatives into the future. And this is where design comes in. And the third way of looking to the future is an intentional future. It's speculating and then understanding what the society needs and then creating a desirable future. And that is the alternative of trying to avoid dysfunctional futures like we have been seeing that it might be unfolding nowadays. So the question that I would like to make for you is, would you prefer to predict the future or to create it? And we, of course, at Echos, we do really believe that we need to create futures and create it with society all together based on social and society needs, not only on technology emergencies or one point of view emergence. So we have been working with quite a few different projects of designing futures with different organizations throughout the years. And we started to understand that there are some principles for designing desirable futures. Because if we don't bring these principles, we kind of end up falling into the trap of designing futures that is only following one point of view. So the principles are that first, everything that was not designed by nature was designed by humans. And therefore, we can redesign everything that is not working. And in this image here, I'm going to describe a bit because usually in our language, we would say everything that was not designed by nature was designed by men. And by using the language men, we would be excluding women as creators. So that's why we're now using the language that everything that was not designed by nature was designed by humans. And therefore, we can redesign everything that is not working. So this is one of the first principles. And then the second one is that every creation of futures is a political act. And what I mean by being a political act is not that it's about parties, the Labour Party, the Republican Party, whatever, but it's more about the polis, the public. And it means that every time that you imagine a future, that you articulate a future, that being for your company, for your product, for your interface, you are creating a vision of the future that is non-innocent and has effects. So we as designers, we need to take responsibility from it. And we also need to see everything and design everything through the lenses of ethical lenses and diversity. Because usually these decisions are being made of creating new kinds of technology, new interfaces and solutions worldwide that are being taken in a space of privilege and prejudice as well. So that's why every time they are designing any kind of future, and that could also be as in a product, a future product, you need to bring these lenses of ethics and diversity. So our approach of designing futures is this one that I'm showing here. So it's basically an inverted diamond. So there is the first diamond that you are analyzing social needs, and then you identify emergencies of the future. Then you go through a stage where you open again another diamond, and you open the first cone of the diamond, where you're going to be exercising future alternatives. Finally, you set the intention after speculating different possibilities of the future, because the future is always a possibility. There is a spectrum. It's not only one way. There is not a destination, right? So after exercising future alternatives, you set an intention collectively with the society, with the context, with the group of people that are involved in this vision of the future, that are going to be impacted by this vision of the future. And then you create a final vision of the future. When you create this vision of the future, you do a future calibration that we call. And this is the middle of our diamond here. And the future calibration means that you're going to be creating an experiment, a prototype, or even how we like to call a prototype, that is a provocation of the future. You're going to show that to the society, to the stakeholders who are going to be impacted by this future, and they're going to give you feedback. Then you're going to be iterating this vision of the future, and finally you're going to start to think about a roadmap for your future. And before that, you need to understand what is the gap between what we have now and what we see as the future. When we understand this gap, that being a gap of the evolution of society, a new, let's say, public policy, or a new feature for your product, or a new product on the overall, then we do a roadmap and we build the steps to create a desirable future. And then finally, because we are designers, we don't only plan, but we create a first experiment for the future. And then we test and we calibrate, and then we created a second experiment that is going to activate the future. So this is our approach that we have been using with different organizations and in different projects to create desirable futures. And they follow 4 principles: that these futures, they always have to be created from people, and not necessarily only from technological trends. They always have to be emergent, meaning that they are going to be emerging now and not going to be replicating the patterns of the past. They always have to be ethical and diverse, and we always have to see the future as a possibility. So our role as designers of desirable futures is that by observing the emergence of behavioral and technological changes, and becoming interventionists of action, we can accelerate the time to explore and foster possible and intentional futures that are, of course, not dystopical, not autocratic, as they are constructed in a collaborative and social way. So this is our role every time that we're designing any kind of vision of the future. And it is a great responsibility. That is why we created these principles and this kind of approach as this inverted diamond that I shared earlier. So a few case studies just to ground us on how we are doing that. So the first case study that I'm going to share is a case study from the healthcare sector. So we worked with a pharma industry on a project focused on predictive health. So instead of designing all the more and more, let's say, medications that were based on solving illness, we want to try to develop medications that work on wellness. And that's why it's called predictive health. So the way how we worked on it was based on real-time data intelligence relating the individual and the environment, social, geographic, and demographic, to clusters of predictions and personalizations. So this would also mean that this pharma industry would have to create a new distribution system based on customization and decentralization, meeting specific demands. And consequently, a different inventory dynamics which should be created as a resource center for customization and planned replacements. So the outcome of these new predictive health would even influence the business model and the distribution and stock, creating optimized logistics to bring treatment closer to the locality of people, as an opposition to relocating people to centers. So the way how we think about predictive health using real-time data intelligence affects the whole system's design of healthcare in a way. Because if you think about bringing real data intelligence to each individual and to each cluster of individuals, you would understand that this place needs to prevent more about, for example, heart diseases. And then we will bring more, let's say, infrastructure to this space because this is the problems that they have by predicting, right? So the way how we speculated, we did everything that I told you before. We analyzed the social needs. We analyzed what are the technological emergencies. Then we started to speculate different futures. Then we created a vision of the future. And then after we created the vision of the future, we needed to test this future. The way how we tested this future is by creating this prototype. It was a product, an artifact of this future. And this artifact of this predictive health was this device, this medical device, that it's kind of like a pill that you ingest, that discharges nanorobots into your bloodstream. And then when you ingest that, we activate the telemedicine and a new health ecosystem through collecting funding with real-time assistance in geolocalized organ print logistics and special care. So only by creating this artifact of this future and showing this to the organization that we're working with, but also with the patients that would be using it, we tested this vision of the future. And they gave us feedback of what is desirable for them or not, from the business perspective and from the patient's perspective as well. And collecting this data, we started to create a whole roadmap using speculative design and designing the services and the experience that would unfold by this vision of the future. So we use, and then we create what we call a video that we call a design fiction, not a science fiction, because it's not only focused on science, but it's a design fiction because it's also based on social and society needs. So the value of designing desirable futures for this organization was that we were building a future vision for them for the next 10 to 15 years. It was inspiring the organization to what is desirable for not only for the internal business side of the organization, but also for society. We were creating an abstraction and a speculation of what might happen in the future. But ultimately, we were nudging the organization to make them converge and influence what they would build, what they are making the decisions now to build a desirable future, not just one that is influenced by trends, right? So then we created the milestones, and then we started the second phase of a desirable future project that it's about activating the future. So then we started to develop design projects, creating what we call minimum viable futures, addressing each step being incremental or radical of the activation of this future. Then we develop KPIs, metrics that validates future evolution or revision, or if there is a revision that needs to be done. Because remember, the future is always evolving, so it's not static, so we need that. And then we define the executors. Define who is able to perform, internal team, consultancies, universities, who are going to be performing this activation of this future. And this is the healthcare case study that it was interesting because we developed the whole vision of the future, and the way how we prototype was through this silly, let's say, artifact of the future that is basically a pill that you ingest and discharge nanorobots in your bloodstream. And then we collect all of this data from there. Another case study that this case study that I showed before was done in Brazil by our Brazilian team in the pharmaceutical industry. And the other one that I wanted to share was done here in Australia, and I participated directly in this project. And we partnered with an organization called WorkSafe. WorkSafe is a government's agency for safety in the workplace, basically. And they usually focus a lot in injuries. So if you think about the work of governmental agency that helps to prevent and helps to reinsert people who suffered injuries in their workspace. And this was pretty much based in the industrial society, that the dangers of work were really physical, right? But then WorkSafe started to understand that the future of the work, let's say, environment is changing a lot, because it's not so industrial anymore, and it's more, let's say, mental, it's more working towards a digital society. They started to think, what is our role as WorkSafe for the next years? So then we helped them to design their vision of the future for 2040. And we use our approach, the Designing Desirable Futures approach, for that. So basically, we started to understand first the key drivers for a possible future. So if we were going to follow a possible future, this most plausible future nowadays, there are a few things emerging. There is a lack of investment in automation. There is traditional trade. There's a lack of regional influence. There is mismanagement of data, tech totalitarianism, and increased healthcare spending. If we only follow the most plausible way that the world is presenting us to what the future might look like, of the future of work and the future of WorkSafe, we created this possible future scenario that basically showed us that the way, if we keep doing what we're doing now, we're going to get to a future that we don't want, that society doesn't want. Because basically, we are going to be selling our individual data. All of our public institutions will become private institutions, and your work life will be an exploitation of selling your individual data for other, let's say, companies. And you would lose your job. You wouldn't be able to be reinserted. You wouldn't be upskilled or anything like that. So we created this vision of 2040 to see, okay, if we keep doing what we're doing now, we're going to get into a place that is not very desirable for us or for society. So then we also speculated a preferred future. And in a preferred future, WorkSafe would help citizens to manage their personalized health, to have a virtual service delivery, to use biotechnology, to have an age-free society, to have positive mental health in the workspace, to have lifelong learning, to use the gig economy, to have an ethical management of personal data, to invest in automation, and to temper climate change. And then we created a different preferred future scenario. And here in the image, you can see kind of like a storyboard of what this future of 2040 would be like for workers in Australia, specifically in Victoria, the state of Victoria. And then it is a desirable future where you would be able to control your data. You would have constantly upskilling your workforce, where you're going to be thinking about mental health all the time and having a work-life balance, okay? So by doing this speculation of the future, we were moving WorkSafe from a vision of working as an agency that focused on recovery and injury and illness, and moving WorkSafe to an agency of well-being and predictive well-being. And this project ended up creating principles to catalyze current and future opportunities for WorkSafe. So we were talking about the principles being enabling active participation of the workforce, being locally accountable, having equity in access, being ethical in data and exponentiality, experiential connection, and having complex systems thinking. So then we created a roadmap. So we understood, okay, so this is the vision of the present. This is the preferred vision of the future for 2048. What is the gap? And then we created a roadmap of each year what WorkSafe needs to invest and develop projects on to reach and to influence a positive and desirable future. All right. So in conclusion, this work now is help to influence all the projects of WorkSafe, of what they are developing as their services, their products, and the way how they interact with their stakeholders. So with that, I was trying to show you what is the role of design in desirable future. And this basically is, there is the design thinking part of design and the design doing part. So the role of design is that it is an effective approach to deal with complex problems. It also contributes to systemically engage and change society. Design also helps to liberate and fosters the construction of an intentional future, a desired future, not just a future that is based on the parameters of the past. It brings community together and those who are part of the problem to design futures, so then it's more ethical and more diverse. And then, because design is not only about planning, but it's also about doing and get to the last mile of design, it makes ideas and solutions become tangible and thus create a real impact. It contributes to a new shape and platform for human interaction that is desirable, and translates solutions easily and make them accessible regardless of the platform or technology. So here are some, if you want to learn more, this is just an introduction of designing desirable futures and how you as a designer can think about what is your influence in the future and what are the things that you are designing are going to create a desirable or non-desirable future. Is it ethical enough? Is it inclusive? Is it thinking about the whole society, or are we just replicating what has already been done over and over again, but it's not really what we want for our future? So if you want to learn more, there are a few links here. There is an ebook that I wrote called The Power of Design, and you can download it for free in the website of School of Design Thinking. So you can go into schoolofdesignthinking.echos.cc and download The Power of Design. You can also download another ebook called The Role of Innovation During Pandemic, written by Ricardo Rufo, the co-founder of Echos, together with me, in collaboration with myself. You can also find this in our website. There's also, if you want to take a picture, you can just take a picture, open your phone, open your camera, and focus on the QR codes here. You're going to be able to download these materials. And if you are a book nerd like me, all of this knowledge that I have been exposing to you and sharing and using in our projects is based on a few books. There is this book called The City of Tomorrow: Sensors, Networks, Hackers, and the Future of Urban Life, from Carlos Hachi and Matthew Claudel. And then there is also this book called The Science of the Artificial from Herman Simon. They are great references. And also other books, if you're keen: Designing Anthropological Futures, The Signals Are Talking, Extrapolation Factory, and Speculative Everything. So these are my go-to books if you are a book nerd like me. So I would like to close and open it to questions and ask you, what are you doing for the future? And how are you influencing the future? Are you using your whole, let's say, design power to influence the future to become a desirable one, or just a replicable one and plausible one? So think about that. And there's a quote from Faith Lee that I would like to leave up to you, that she says that we have time to fix the future, but we need to do it now. So thank you, and I'm open for questions.